Hey, what's up again, everybody? It's Robert184, 2Rs2Bs, Gundam Reviews.net, and Sunday night means now that the Olympics are over and Gundam games are wrapped up, it's time to get back on track. Gundam Age Episode 44 is here on the air and off the air now, I suppose, which means it's time to talk about that as we approach the climax of this series. So let's get to the of the week, starting with character, where for the last couple weeks, Zeheart has had to be putting up with Asum Asano saying, "Hey, remember my kid? Well, he spent some time with that guy who's your boss, and well, anyway, he told me the whole plan, and now you gotta believe me, even though we're sworn enemies." And Zeheart said, "I'm having none of it for the last two episodes," and said, "I will not listen." However, the episode started with him actually listening, recollecting, and reflecting, and all of a sudden going in and confronting the big boss of the Martians and saying, "Hey, what's the deal?" before we got to move on. At the same time, in terms of Zeheart as a character in this episode, he had a chance, he had the information revealed to him, and yet he still chose to go ahead with it. So you have to admire his convictions at least, if not his straight boneheaded stupidity, but you wonder he's still got a few more episodes to get this straightened out. So how about the master himself, old Ezelkant, who was able to basically, I had to love that he just turned on the reveal all your secrets in front of a great backdrop machine, where he was able to reveal everything to Zeheart, even though Zeheart had conveniently found out, thanks to that annoying old school friend who just won't let him go around blowing up all sorts of Earthlings. Anyway, at the end, Ezelkant certainly got, even though he had the convenient dose of blood coughing up at the end, or perhaps because of it, he was able to get Zeheart on side, and all of a sudden his plan looks like it's going to advance despite his dying body. It looks like that he's found a set of younger hands to take over. It just remains to be seen just how much of a sucker he's playing Zeheart for. But for my actual character of the week, Zeheart had his moments, and Ezelkant certainly has him over a drum, it would seem. Nonetheless, I'm going to have to give it to Kyo Asuno, which may be a little bit of a surprise. And at the same time, I'm going to contrast that by also giving it to Flit Asuno, because these two have both come across. Asum sort of had a quiet episode, sort of playing between these two here. But you have the opposite extremes of wipe them out, every one of them, Flit, which has got to go down in history as the most crazy Gundam lead character that we've seen. And how cool was it that he actually flashed back to his old young self and remembering all of the people that he's lost along the way. And at the same time, we have Kyo, who's optimism and let's get along with everybody, very Setsuna at the end kind of thing there. We've seen this with a lot of protagonists since 2000 in Gundam, well, I suppose even earlier with Lauren and things like that. Nonetheless, it didn't come across as very cloying in this episode. Kyo has his reasons to not want to see the absolute extermination of an entire race of people, as they are just all people, as he's pointing out, and Flit at the same time feels the heavy pressure of being a savior as he was anointed all those years ago at the beginning of this 100-year war, and it's obviously taken a heavy toll on him, with Asum sort of taking a middle path or so it would seem between them. Nonetheless, the conflict between these two is going to play out well, and all of them are having interesting perspectives, and more conflict makes more entertaining television. So how about Mobile Suit of the Week? Well, is it going to be the FX, or the Age 3, or the Age 2, or the Age... Well, no, because really none of them did anything in this episode whatsoever. We did get to see a little tiny bit of the FX. However, the most important one had to be the Legolas, and if there's something that doesn't want to make you rush out and go buy the plastic model, which I should get on doing, it's got to be that. He basically, Zeheart has been bequeathed that after his Giraga was sort of beat up there in the attack on the shifty guy on Lunar Base in the last couple weeks. Nonetheless, the Giraga beat up, he's going to get a hand-me-down from the Emperor, the boss himself, the old man who not only did he give him his Staff of Power, but he also gave him his Gundam, and Zeheart actually gets to appreciate just how fun it is to go and pilot one of those white mean machines as he goes out. And I remember him taking out the old one way back in the day where he had his red duck and he was cutting through the asteroids and saying, "It can't keep up with me, whatever am I supposed to go do?" And in the end here, he gets to go do the same thing, except last time, instead of just upgrading to a new mobile suit, he's already got it. Better weapons, slicing through things like they're paper, until all of a sudden there's a giant thing, which is going to be a bit of a foreshadowing we've seen some foreshadowing in what we've seen with the opening, and I guess if you've been reading the manga all along, you know all about it. Nonetheless, a great debut, and it's great to see Zeheart move on to his 5th mobile suit, despite only being in 2 generations. This guy's going for a Char kind of record. But there's also no point in skipping that when Zeheart ran out there and he was fighting in the asteroid belt, he found ExaDB's baby, Sid, I'm assuming. I've really got to get on reading that manga. Nonetheless, 5 to 6 times the size of a regular Gundam out there as a big mobile armor, Cubely influences, and looking really cool and old school, but you know that it's going to replicate into something T-1000-ish and much, much stronger. Nonetheless, a good debut and makes me excited to see more of it. First scene of the week, as we actually got to see Zeheart listen to his old school HUD chum, and he goes up to him and says, "Boss, what is this secret Garden of Eden and Plan of Eden that you've been planning all along?" And the boss says, "Well, I might as well tell you everything." And he tells Zeheart, "Yes, we're going to go do these things because humanity can't be trusted not to repeat all the same mistakes that it's been doing over and over again, even if we win the war." And then in the end, the best part of it all had to be the fact that the background, if this was green screened, would actually be able to disappear, because if you're going to give your reveal of your whole insidious plan, you might as well do it in some pretty cool backdrops with even old school shadows engulfing Zeheart in despair as he listens. And in the end, as the old man fell down with a convenient bout of coughing and blood, and he handed over his power staff, Zeheart looks to be caught hook, line, and sinker, which is something that even another hothead didn't fall for back when he met his master. But since this is a Gundam show, it still was great again in terms of scene to see Zeheart having an absolute blast out there in the Gundam, and a lot more fun than that duck-like foul Zetas are back there. But ultimately, scene of the week for me was pretty simple, as it just happened in a very nondescript hallway on board the Earth Federation base, or wherever they handed over the keys to Flit to go and exterminate everybody, despite Algreus' slight misgivings. It was great to see first Aasim and Flit end up meeting up, and they were talking about, well, you have no right to judge me since you ran off and became a space pirate and things like that. And at the same time, Aasim understood by his father the reasons why and why he had to fight. And he understood that, but he also said that Kyo's different. So despite the fact that he spent no time whatsoever with his son, he seems to still understand that, especially Kyo has been heavily influenced by his time on Mars and things like that. In the end, though, it looks like these three are going to go in their separate directions, as was made clear by the episode title. But at the end of the day, I thought it was a great take on this, and Kyo certainly had some harsh words for his grandfather, which made him think as he sat there and said, what kind of savior am I? And at the same time, am I the savior? And Kyo seems to actually have a more balanced approach to this, with that wild card being that super pirate there who seems to have things a lot more under control, especially if we're going to see any more X-rounders, everybody gets knocked out but him kind of thing. Anyway, the way these three are going to interact, it's certainly a different take. We've seen things like Shin and Kira conflict in the past in terms of lead characters and how they want to go about doing things. Here to see the three of them, it's a very new dynamic and something that I'd say is not necessarily unwelcome. So overall, even though there wasn't a lot of action in this episode, certainly the plot moved along as we got to see the Martians and the Vegans reveal their plan, and the Earth Federation pretty much do the same thing. At the same time, the biggest thing that I was left with at the end of this is gotta get out there and read the manga Memories of Sid and just see exactly what's happening with that mobile suit that we've seen at the end, or the massive mobile armor that's obviously got something to do with the XDB. Anyway, everybody, I'm sure we're going to see a lot more action from the Age FX and everybody else, and it's great to see Zeheart in a new suit that's certainly going to be Zeongish anyway, and at least not pink. It's got that old white Gundam color scheme, which is probably going to help it in terms of sales. Can't wait to see that in Plamo form in high grade. Anyway, everybody, why don't you let me know what you think of the episode, of the review, and of all the other silly things that you see on the channel, and stick around. We'll see you next Sunday with lots more news, reviews, and everything else you can use. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye. Don't feel bad about it, kid. Daddy issues are a trope going back to the very beginning of Gundam.